This is Race Quest, Body and Mind, and today's guest is Anna Villanueva. She is a pranic healer and a master neurolinguistic programming practitioner. This is going to be a really interesting conversation. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. My name is Ray Dwyer, and I am your host to Race Quest Body and Mind. And tonight, we have a wonderful discussion with Anna Venu. I tried to get it right in my mind and I missed it. Let me see if I can
Villa,
try it again.
Villanueva.
Villanueva. There it is. I apologize. And she's going to talk about pranic healing
Yes.
and NLP, neuro-logistic processing. And if I,
Neurolinguistic, neurolinguistic process.
yes,
Programming, actually. Neurolinguistic programming. Yes.
I
We
thought
can
I'd,
re-credit this if you want.
I thought I'd do, but no, that's part of the humor of this, just. So, ladies and gentlemen, that prepares you for the fact that I don't know much about what we're talking about tonight. But if you have something to say, I've got the chat channel open. Leave it as don't don't post it to individuals. Post it to the group, and I'll read it and we'll discuss it as the opportunities come up. Um, so, Anna, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about how you got here and what we're going to talk about tonight.
How I got here. Okay. Well, let's see. I was going to start out with just explaining, what neurolinguistic programming is. Okay. And
But
in mod
people don't know you. Tell us who you are.
Oh, okay. Well, but that they're going to know me by the end of this. They'll know who I
They'll
am.
know you. Okay,
Yes, they
I'll
will know
go.
who I am.
I'll go with that.
Anyway, so the, my definition of neurolinguistic programming, which I've done for like 30 years now, is it is a mind change technology. Okay, and basically what it is, it's like, how do you feel? How would you rather feel? Okay, so that's basically what where it stems from. The history of it is in 1960 there were two gentlemen. One of them was named Richard Bandler. He was a student at Berkeley. He was studying computer processing. And he took a psychology course with John Grinder. That's who his professor was. So they started talking, having coffee, talking, and they were talking about why, at that time, back in the day, that people would go to the psychologist or psychiatrist for years and never really saw any change. They would just keep going back, and just it was talk therapy. And that's not to belittle, the talk therapy that's making a resurgence now, which I think is wonderful, because now there's the stigma is not there anymore, and so people can get the help they need. And because of the work that these two men did, it has evolved. Okay, so anyway, so what they did was they ended up what they wanted to look at, how there were like six psychologists, psychiatrists that were so powerful that they were affecting change in their clients. And so, in fact, they were able to take their patients who were in a catatonic state out of that state, which no one had been able to do. So they wanted to find out how are this handful of psychiatrists or psychologists able to do this. And so what they did was they went and they talked to them, they studied them, and then they started modeling them, what they call modeling. And so as a result of that, they put together this technology of these different techniques, and then they put it all together into this technology that they called neurolinguistic programming. Okay, and again, it's to change the way you think. It's a lot like what Joe does, but this was, back, it started in the 60s, and so it was 3D. Okay, but it was still hugely effective, for that time. Now, they didn't create these techniques, okay? And some people say there's like 200 NLP techniques, which I don't agree with that. I would say there's like 20 basic techniques. But of those 20, they've evolved and people have added to them and everybody kind of puts their own spin on it, so there may be, there's 10 variations of 20 basic techniques. But so anyway, what they did was they took these techniques that these people were using, the ones that worked, and so they took them and they basically introduced a lot of these ideas into the mainstream. Okay, like for example, these are things that you're have probably are aware of, that you've heard of, but you didn't know that they evolved out of NLP. But there's the anchor. Okay, and we're going to talk about it. Ray and I are going to talk about that, how I do an anchor. Okay. Then there's the visual squash, and we'll demonstrate that. That's another technique that I use a lot. Then there's, let's see, anchor, visual squash. Now, these aren't all of them, but these are the ones that I use the most. There's the reframe. Now, the reframe is it's trance work. It's like a guided meditation. It goes deeper. And I'll explain about it more. Ray, don't forget to ask me about the reframe. And then, let's see, what else? Oh, and then there's the I-axis cues that you've probably heard about, which when people communicate, their eyes go in certain directions, just as an example. And I will use an example of that too. But I will also admit that is it's one technique that I really did not master. Okay. Everything else I'm pretty good at, but that one not so much. But in any case, like if a person's eyes go up to the left, that means they're thinking about they're recalling something. If their eyes go up to the right, that means that they're constructing, so they're creating. It's new. Okay. And the same thing here. If they go off, this is auditory, and it's recall, and over here it's auditory construct. But if they go down to the left, and then that's kinesthetic. And a lot of times when people go down to the left, they're getting in touch with their feelings. And a lot of time it can be a negative. Okay, that means they're not being completely honest with you. Okay, so the I-axis cues can be very helpful. And then the other thing, auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. Okay, that's another thing that they brought into the mainstream. Now, again, these are concepts that they didn't necessarily create, but they brought them out to people to use, okay, in a way that they could actually use them. So how did I start using NLP, or why did I start using NLP? Well, I think a lot of you know that I went to Dr. Joe's retreat in Orlando in November, and I was a Healy, and I was healed from CPTSD. I had, and I won't talk about it because they tell you not to talk about it because it just recreates it. So I don't want to do that. But I had been. That's why I did NLP. Okay, and that's why I used pranic healing, was to heal myself, and I was very successful. Yeah, this is an analogy that I use. It's like if you can imagine a big trash can, like the 30-gallon trash can you put outside for the people to come and pick up. Well, it's like that trash can is full of trash, right? Because my early childhood was not good. Okay. And so I used these tools to clean that trash can out. And I did that. But then at the bottom, there's that sludge, and you can't, no matter what you do, you can't get rid of it. Well, that's what, was dogging me. And I couldn't get rid of it. And so until I went to Joe's retreat, and I was healed. Praise God. So that's kind of that's how I got here. Okay, Ray. So that answers your question. Okay. So how did I end up doing NLP way back 30 years ago? Well, to give you an idea of of kind of childhood I grew up in, and I describe it as living in a concentration camp for 20 years. And my brother, when he got married, he his in-laws became part of the family, right? So they came into the family. Well, when there's that level of dysfunction in a family, you don't, nobody comes into the family. It's very closed. But when that happened, when they came in, and my brother's mother-in-law saw the way that my mother treated me, she adopted me, okay, as a young adult. And this is really what saved me. And so she went to all her neighbors and said, I have four daughters now. So she adopted me, and and her husband came on board. So that, and she nurtured me like a mother. And she gave me what I needed. And I was very shut down. And if I hadn't received that, I don't think I wouldn't be the person I am now. So so anyway, I went on and I got married, had my son. So when my son was 3 years old, um, as is often the case, your children will bring up these things in you that, of course, I wasn't expecting this, that that you have suppressed. And so that's what happened. He was 3 years old, and I was having all of this stuff come up, like all these memories. And I was extremely depressed, and I was totally dissociated, and basically I was a mess. I can't even describe to you how much of a mess I was. So I had a friend, and she told me about NLP, so I started going to the classes. And you take the class, and then when you take the basic course, you can repeat it as often as you like for no charge. Well, most people would take the basic class, and then they would take the master class. Okay. But I knew that I wasn't ready to take the master class. I knew that if I took the master class, that I would, it was, I couldn't afford it, number one. And then secondly, I felt like if I took it, it would just be a waste of money because I wasn't ready for it. So for 5 years, I kept repeating the basic class. I'd go like every week, I would go religiously. And I did the techniques on myself. I started doing anchors. I would write these sheets of 50 things that I wanted to change. And then I would start doing anchors on each one of them. Okay. And then I would write another list of 50, and I would do those. My friends who know me, my really close friends, they know what I've done to change. And then I would just keep doing. I've done hundreds and thousands of anchors, visual squash, and I still do visual squash, and I'll demonstrate one in a little while with Ray. And I did reframes because I was dissociated, and I had parts that were split off. I can't even believe I'm telling you all of this, but
Anna, let me pause in a second here and get you to define a couple of those terms as you used it.
okay.
Please give a kind of a conversant definition or discussion on anchors and reframing. Those
Well, I'm
to
gonna
you, those are common terms, but to
right.
someone who's not familiar,
I'm gonna demonstrate an anchor, Ray, like I did for you yesterday. I'll do that. But as far as a reframe, that's a good question. A reframe is, like I said, it's trance work, and it's a guided meditation, and it's where you go inside and you contact that part, and you think it, because the part has a good intention, and it usually comes up from the trauma. It comes out of the trauma, and it's trying to protect you. It's helping you to survive. But then once you're out of that situation, you're not really, people that have experienced trauma, like you, Ray, that's what Ray and I we talk about a lot. But the body thinks you're still in that, and Joe talks about it, that you're still in that state, right? So you contact that part, and you tell that part, um, that it's not working. The thing that it's doing is not working anymore. And we're going to give it new ways. Okay. And that's what you do. You give it new ways. And you don't even have to know what the new ways are. You're just giving it new ways. It's a very creative process. And then and so then it's extremely effective. At that time I was doing for 2.5 years, I did one every 3 weeks. And now I can do three in one day. But at that time, it's a process where, like, if you imagine you have a brick wall, and you're taking out a brick, because a brick needs to be repaired. You're repairing that brick and you're putting it back. Well, you don't want to take out too many bricks at one time because then your walls will fall apart. So you don't want that. So I would do what I was doing, um, like I said, I had these split off parts and they were coming up and there were emotions, feelings that I had cut off. And they were coming up as children and presenting themselves to me. And for example, there was one that was a little boy, and he was 12 years old, and he was anger. And so each of these things were represented by these emotions I would not fully, be in contact with. So I integrated those through this process of the reframe. So I use that. I'm a lot more integrated than I used to be. But that's what I used. And so then, and I use the visual squash. Like I said, I still use visual squash. And so then I kept doing it until I finally took the master class. Do you want to go ahead and do the demonstration of the visual squash? You ready for that?
I think we could do that. It's like you said, it's hard to describe in
Well, we're going
3D
to show.
words when it's really an
It's
emotional thing that you do.
Well, the NLP is experiential. It's like Joe's work. It's experiential. You have to experience it, and then also the pranic healing is also experiential. But we're
Yeah,
going to do a quick demonstration of the visual squash.
yeah.
And before we do that, I want to say that when I when I read uh, Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda, because I started going to the Self-Realization Fellowship, which he founded. Um, and so I read, when I read that book, in the book, they describe something that's that they're, that those are the techniques that the yogis have been using for centuries. And there's a technique in there that's like the visual squash that we're going to show you right now. It's very simple. So, okay, Ray, if you would put out your left hand. And by the way, I broke my left arm, so it seems kind of weird. I'm just starting to get, some of it back. Okay, so in your left hand, if you would look at your left hand, okay, and just you don't have to tell me because this is non-verbal, okay, and just if you'll just look at it and if there's and think of something that you want to change. How do I feel? How would I rather feel? And it's non-judgmental, okay, that we don't put any kind of judgment on there. Okay, do you have something?
Yes.
Okay, so now put out your right hand, okay, and I look at your right hand, and then I want you to think of something that the way you would rather feel, okay, and tell me when you're there.
Okay.
You there?
Yes.
Okay, so now I want you to put them opposite each other, okay, just like the way Joe tells us. All right, so now you're going to start to bring them together, okay? And a lot of times they don't want to come together, okay? There's very heavy energy between them. And so in this case, this is what I do. It's kind of, it seems silly, but it really works. So what you want to do is you want them to start communicating with each other, okay? And some people just bring them together, but actually in the beginning, it's not always that easy because these are two things totally opposite, right? So you want them to talk to each other and kind of come to and they'll get closer together once they start figuring things out, okay? So again, you're having these parts, just, you're trying to get them to communicate. And then you now bring them closer, and closer until you get them completely together. And then you bring the right hand in because that's what you want into your heart and covered by your left. That's a visual squash. Now I'm going to give you some more information about the visual squash. I became estranged from my mother. Well, not just my mother, my whole family of origin. Um, when my son was born, there was something that happened, and so I just decided, no, no, I just can't keep doing this. So I became estranged from them. And plus, I had my adopted parents too. They were very supportive and they were like grandparents to my son. So for 7 years, and that helped me to heal and to use these technologies that we're discussing to heal. So I uh, so anyway, after 7 years, my adopted father said, "You have to go back." And my son was asking about, his relatives, his family, and I told him, but he didn't believe me until he went down there and found out. But in any case, so then we did go down there, and we took the train down to San Antonio. And on the way down there, I I did 50 visual squash on fear because I was terrified to see my mother again.
Isn't it
Because
funny? For some people, family is the most terrifying, spirit disturbing thing you can have. I'm sitting here going, totally relating to it. My family was about as dysfunctional as anything. So I am just going, yeah, yeah, yeah. Totally with you on that story, Anna.
so I did 50 visual squash on fear. Okay. So we get there, and I get to the place where we were supposed, the whole family was going to be there as a family event. And I had made arrangements for us to, my escape arrange, if I needed it, because I'd never been able to be in a room with my mother for longer than 15 minutes without all hell breaking loose. So anyway, so I walk in and she's there and she walks up to me and we're face to face, like this. And she's like, "Oh, hi, oi, mija. I'm so glad you're here. It's so good to see you." you know. And then it was so interesting because like I said, I'm not my weakest point with NLP is the eye axis cues. But I saw her eyes go zoom, 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 all these different directions. She was standing right in front of me, and I just saw her. I could see her eyes just going everywhere. And so later I realized that she was looking for the fear, and the fear was gone. It wasn't there anymore. So she had to resort to plan B. And I was able to stay there. I stayed the whole time. I didn't have to call my backup. It was amazing. For me, it was totally amazing because that was a freedom for me. You see. And so after that, it wasn't the most ideal relationship, but it was a lot better. So so that will tell you how powerful this technology is. So then I guess now we can start talking about pranic, right? Pranic healing. I don't remember how I became aware of pranic. All I know is that I ended up taking all 5 classes. You can only study pranic healing on the East Coast or the West Coast. So I went to Los Angeles for the classes, and I called them my God trips. And it was like everything fell into place. The money, the time. My ex-husband at that point, was willing to take care of my son. It was just amazing. And one time I was flying out there, and this lady was next to me, and she had fear of flying, and she was she was very afraid. And I wanted to tell her, there's nothing that's going to happen to this plane because this is a God trip for me. So this plane is will be fine. But I couldn't tell her that. I mean, how do you tell people? How do you tell somebody that, right? But it did. It landed. We had a beautiful landing. And I got there and I took all the classes and I learned how to do pranic healing. So pranic healing is it's an energy uh, technology where it's very procedural. You have to learn all these procedures, how to use, how to clean. You're cleaning the body. I know how to use the crystals. So when I do a healing for somebody, and I still do healing sessions, but I only since I work, have a very high level job with a telecommunications company that I like. It's a good job. It pays very well. But but I still do healing sometimes. If people call me, they'll call me for a healing, and then I check with my guides to see if that's something that I should do. And then if it is, then I'll make arrangements with them and I'll go and do the healing. But So I'll start with the pranic healing. And so what you do is you clean the body. You have to be very, and again, you have certain procedures that you have to follow. So you have to clean the body and make sure that all the centers are clean. Then you energize the centers, okay? And you go through the centers one by one and you're energizing them. What the difference between pranic healing is that they teach you how to bring in the energy from, the universe into you. It comes through you first, and then you send it out. All
Okay.
right.
I've got to get you to play with words again. Clean the
Okay.
body and energize. Get down to the fundamentals of what those two words mean to you.
Wow. Again, this is very experiential. It means that, oh gosh, when I clean the body, I've had, black spots that show up on the wall, because what you're doing is you're clean, especially with the crystal, because the crystal will go even deeper into it like a center, and you're cleaning it out. You're cleaning out all that negativity, and to get rid of it, from the body. And then, but it's non-touch. It's totally non-touch. So you're not taking on that negativity. You're bringing in, then you bring in the energy through you. And like I said, then you send it out. Okay. And, when you take classes, they teach you how to do all of that. So that's what I do when I work with a client is, um, I'll ask them what their presenting problem is. But see, another thing, I think I shared this with you, Ray, is that at one point, pretty early on, when I started working with clients doing pranic healing, my guides started helping me. And that made it really easy for me. I felt so much, more confident because they would tell me what to do. And they're really funny because they'll say things like, well, you really should have done it this other way. And I'll say, well, why didn't you tell me that? And they'll just laugh at me. They like to make fun of you.
Okay. You led me into another question.
Okay.
Which came first, the guides or the pranic healing?
Oh, the pranic healing. I was already, yeah. And then these, oh, I've had my guides because, I've been doing the deep meditation for so long. My guides, they communicated with me, but doing the pranic healing and the NLP have brought my guides more to the forefront. And now Joe, I mean, they're just with me all the time now, so it's pretty awesome. But yeah, they help me with the pranic healing. They'll tell me what to do and which, centers to focus on, what order to do it in. Did you clean, they'll let me know. I know how if I've done enough cleaning and I need to energize. I know when I don't energize.
You're
Yeah,
still
because it's
using that word and haven't defined it. And the reason why I'm picking on that word is that I've heard so many people use that word differently. So I'm trying to get you to really define for me and
okay.
the
Well,
group.
that's okay.
When you say clean, I could talk about it from my dispenser work and history. I want you to talk about an example of cleaning so that we can be with you on that.
Okay. Well, like for example, if I'm cleaning somebody, okay, and again, you have to use certain procedures. You have to use this certain water. You have to dispose of it in a certain way. There's a lot of procedures. But anyway, when I actually clean, and that I don't always use a crystal. I have to, if it's a basic cleaning, then I just use my hand. But if it's more like psychological, especially, you want to use a crystal. Okay. But what you do is you're cleaning so for example, here, third eye, let's just Joe's favorite center. And you're just cleaning it. You go in and you're cleaning that, that's what I do. You're cleaning it out. And you have to dispose. Yeah, I know it seems weird, but it works and it's amazing. But and people feel really good after this and it gets rid of a lot of stuff. And this is okay. And then you have to dispose of it in a certain way too. And then after you've cleaned it out, okay, then you send the energy and you're sending energy to that center.
Okay.
Okay. But you can't put too much energy. You have to know how much to send. Because if you send too much, and I think you found this out, it can
Yeah.
cause problems, right?
Right.
So
Yeah. As
yes.
As
Yeah.
someone who's new to the work, I have a way of coming in with all guns blazing, and the people go, "Oh, I got a headache." I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. So
You know, it's really
there is a
interesting.
measure that you do with it.
Another thing about pranic healing is that it's one technology that you can use for people that are terminal. It's very rare for to be able to do that. You know, most technologies you don't have that. But like when my mother was dying, and I had to go see her, I had already been told, you know, when to go see her. So the evening before, I did a healing for her, a pranic healing for a terminal person, and it was really interesting because you don't energize, you just clean. And when I was cleaning her body, she did not have any energy below the waist, so the energy was already leaving. It freaked me out a little bit. And the next day I went down there, and then she passed on Sunday. I did the cleaning on a Thursday, went down there to San Antonio on a Friday, and then she passed on a Sunday. So yeah. So anyway, when I do a healing for a client, I will do the pranic healing first. Okay. And then I will use an NLP, usually an anchor, to lock it in. Okay. And if somebody comes to me with a presenting problem, okay, for a healing, then when I'm done, and we're going to demonstrate an anchor in a minute. When I'm done with that, you know, with that session, that problem will be done. It will be 100% done. I've never had a client that I've helped that has come back and said, you know, this didn't work. You know what I mean? Now I do tell them, I said, look, this presenting problem will be done, but something else may come, you know, underneath it, you know, like that proverbial onion, you know, yeah. But and a lot of times, if I know that I have to have, you know, additional sessions, I will know. You know, I'll tell them, you know, it's probably going to take 3 sessions for you to be, you know, for everything that you're dealing with. It'll be 3 sessions, and they'll know. But usually, you know, for whatever they come to me for, that part will be done.
Let me ask a
And
question. There's in that pause. Jenny asked, "What does crystals do in pranic healing? How do you use it, and what's the principle in them?"
I just said that. The main thing you use the crystals for, first of all, the crystals will take the healing deeper. Okay, it'll make the cleaning deeper. It'll make the energizing deeper. It just goes deeper. They teach you how to do that. Okay, in the classes, but
So is the crystal a radiant energy, or is it an absorbing, a receiving energy?
the both.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear. That's what we're
Both.
talking about. Is
But there's constant, another thing I didn't mention is that there's constant cleaning. You're constantly cleaning. Like if you're using, you know, you're constantly cleaning your hands, you're constantly cleaning the crystal. That's what I talk about. That's what I meant when I said there's a lot of procedures involved. Okay. And the crystal is primarily used for psychological. Okay. I have crystal wands. Okay, and they, you know, my I have a clear one, and then I have the amethyst, and the amethyst is the one that I primarily use for psychological issues. Now I want to tell you that the last healing session that I did was for this couple in North Dallas, and they had called me. It's a lovely couple, and I went out there, and they said they had just moved. No, I don't use my crystal's not that big. You know, you don't want to use a crystal.
I'm a guy. Bigger is better. Home improvement.
No, 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 my crystal. Well, I have a small hand too. My crystal's about that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was just trying to picture how you used it. Just
Now, like I told you, you know, in a lot of cases, you don't even use a crystal.
oh,
You know,
okay.
I was asked. I do muscle testing as well for both NLP and pranic healing. If I have any questions, I'll use muscle testing, and I'll get the answers that way. But anyway, so I went to go see this couple, right? And they had moved here because of his job. And he was having some issues. I think they were like they were manifesting, I believe, as psychological, and they were, like these headaches. And they were attributing it to stress from the job. And so I did the pranic healing for him. And then I did the NLP, the anchor. And then they invited me to stay for dinner. They were Indian, and I love Indian food, so I couldn't say no. So we were all sitting around the table, and then I was tuned into them, having done the healing, and it turns out that what was going on with them, even more so than the job situation, okay, the stresses from the job, was that the wife also worked and they didn't have any kind of a support system, and so they were not able to spend as much time with each other as as would be as they needed because they had children. And so what was coming out was that they were having marital issues and that they hadn't really addressed, and that was creating a lot of stress for the husband primarily, but also for the wife. So basically, and so I shared that with them. I told them, I said that, this is, this had come out in the healing. And so I told them, that was part of it. So I ended up saving their marriage as well as helping him with the healing. So anyway, do you want to go ahead and talk about the anchor now? I think it's a good time.
Yeah, that would be a good time. And
Now I want to talk about how I do an anchor, okay? And this is something again that's experiential. So I'm not obviously, since we're on video, I can't this is a touch. It's NLP and it's a touch technique. And so I can't touch Ray, so normally what I would do is if I'm going to do an anchor with somebody, they'll be sitting across from me, okay? And I will ask them permission to touch their knees, okay? And so then I will again. It's how do you feel? How would you rather feel? Okay, and then so what I'll do is I'll have them take 3 deep breaths. All right, okay, and then once they've taken the 3 deep breaths, then I'll say what I want you to go to that state. Okay, the one that you don't want. All right, and tell me when you're there. All right.
okay,
And so when they're there, and then what I do is I calibrate, which means that I look at them for physical cues. I'll look at their face, their eyes, their mouth, their neck, their chest for different, and their shoulders. Okay. So I'll know. And so when they're there, and I'll also ask them, are you there? And they'll tell me. And so then I'll put my fingers on their left knee. Okay. That means I'm installing the anchor. All right. And so I'll hold it there and I'll keep calibrating. Okay. To make sure that it goes in. Okay. And it's just something I've done so many anchors on myself. So I know what to look for. And so I'm calibrating to make sure that that is going in. Because see, a lot of times people will do an anchor and they'll just go, boom, boom, they'll touch the knees and, and then they'll collapse them, boom, boom again, and then they'll say it's done. No, it's not done. So anyway, so then I'll keep it on and on the left until I know that anchor has been installed. All right. Then I'll do break state. So I'll ask Ray. I'll say, Ray, what color is your car, Ray?
gray.
Okay, well you can open your eyes because sometimes I'll clap, get them out of that state. I want them to break state. I want to bring them back to beta. Okay. All right. So he's out now. All right. Take a deep breath. Okay. And so then I'll say, all right, now, Ray, think about a time when you were experiencing the way you would rather feel in this case. Okay. Close your eyes. Okay. I want you to go there. All right. And tell me when you're there. All right.
Okay.
Okay. You're there? Okay.
Yes.
And then I'll put two fingers on his right knee. Okay. And then again, I will calibrate to make, just I'll look and see where, his eyes, I'll just see. I'm looking for certain cues that tell me that you keep your eyes closed and just certain cues to tell me that he is in that state. All right. Now, when he's there, then I'll say, okay, now I want you to see what you saw, hear what you heard, feel what you felt. All right. Now, if it's a picture, I want you to make it bigger. I want you to make it as big as you know, as a movie screen at a theater. Huge, just huge. I want you to I want you to see colors. I want you to make it really bright and colorful. Okay. And then I want you to, if there's sounds attached, I want you to make them louder, really loud, like surround sound. Okay. And any feelings that are attached, I want you to make them stronger. Yes, really get into those feelings. There you go. Yeah. Yeah, that should feel really good. There you go. See, I'm looking for a smile from him, to know that he's really getting into this experience. All right, then this is a Bandler effect, and a lot of people don't know about this because they didn't go study with Bandler. So, but this is Bandler, and he'll say, okay, now, Ray, I want you to double it, make it really big, really big. Oh, good, good, good. Okay, now I want you to triple it, triple it. There you go. Yeah. Doesn't that feel great? Okay. Now I want you to quadruple it. There you go. Awesome. Okay, now, all right, now, what'd you have for breakfast today?
I had some fresh almond flour biscuits.
You can open your eyes now. It's installed. It's there. Okay. Now what I'm going to do? Now I just want you to close your eyes, right? So now you don't have to do. I'm going to do all the work. You don't have to do anything. Okay. So you just. So what I'll do now is I'm going to put my two fingers on the left, and usually I'll wait just a minute just to make sure that it's gone in again. I'll calibrate. I'm constantly calibrating. Then I'll put my two fingers on the right. Okay. All right. We're not really, I mean, I don't know if he's probably, touching his own knees, but then, and I'll hold him there and I'll continue to calibrate. Okay. And again, my guides will usually help me with this. And it's an intuitive thing and I know what to look for. And so at some point I will release the undesired state, let's just say. Okay. So I will lift those two fingers. I'll know when to do that. All right. And then I'll keep the other two on. This is called, they call it collapsing the anchors. I call it integrating the anchors. That's what I call it. So I'll keep my other two fingers on the right side. And I'll leave them there. And then I'll tell him after I'll continue to calibrate. And then I'll say, now I'm going to, you can keep your eyes closed. I'm going to lift my I'm going to lift my hand, my fingers off of your knee. So, but I want you to continue to process until it's complete. And you will know when it's complete. Okay. And then I'll gently remove my hand from the other knee. And then I'll wait. And some people, it'll take a few, just a few minutes. Some people takes longer. Just depends because however long it takes to complete. But they will know. This is something that is evolved, that I've learned, that it's just better to just let them do the processing. Oh, okay. And then they'll open their eyes and they'll look different and they'll feel better. And the great thing about doing the anchor, the way I do it, is that you can check your work. Okay. All right. So then, Joe will be back and I'll say, how do you feel?
I
I'm
can
asking,
feel my nasals are actually energized, and I've got an extra blood flow going across my chest and my shoulders. Like it's excited,
so you feel
ready.
good.
Yes,
Yeah. They usually come back and say, oh, I feel good. All right. So now I'm gonna check my work. So I'll say, okay, now, so Ray, I think I called you Joe. Ray, close your eyes. Okay. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to go back to that original state. Okay. And I want you to think about that original state now. How does it feel?
lacking.
Can you
Um,
even think, can you even think about it?
it's it feels lacking and uh, a bit depressed.
Depressed.
Yeah, not energized. Lacking, uh, slumped. I don't know
Okay.
how to
Well,
say it. Just
it'll
yeah.
continue. I tell my clients, it will continue to process. Okay. So drink a lot of water. But about 9 times out of 10, I'll get what's called the apex syndrome, where it's completely gone and they can't remember it. I'll give you an example. When I went to I studied with Richard Bandler in Orlando, interesting in Orlando several years ago, and I had to get permission to take his class because all of the students had studied with him except me. I studied in Dallas, and I knew that my training was lacking, even though I had used it so much on myself, but I hadn't learned trance. Okay, and so anyway, I had to apply for permission to take the class, and I was granted permission, so I went. And I went there, and I felt, like everybody else was way ahead of me because they had studied with Bandler before. It was, as it turns out, because I had used it so much on myself, I ended up healing people at the class. And there was this one woman that was taking the class, and she was actually auditing the class. She was allowed. She hadn't taken anything about NLP. She didn't know anything about it. And I could tell she was lost. So I asked her, I approached her. I ran into her in the ladies' room, and I approached her and I said, "Well, do you want me to show you something that, so you'll understand how it works?" And she goes, "Oh, yes, please, please." And so we went out to eat. We went to this little cafe, and then I did an anchor with her to show her, this is what it is. This is one of the techniques. So I did an anchor, well, how do you feel? How would you rather feel? It was something that had been, she said, this was something, of course, you don't know, I don't have to know. And so it was something that had been dogging her for 6 months. So I did the anchor, and after the anchor, I tested it, and she said that she couldn't remember it, she couldn't recall it, and it had been dogging her for 6 months. So anyway, we went back to the class, and so that was interesting. By the end of the class, there was a final, and they broke us up into 4 groups, and they had 4 captains at the head of the room, and they picked the teams for the other captains. Okay, so I was the last one to be chosen, which was my common experience. I was always last to be chosen for a team, for sports teams. That's true. That was my life. But in this case, it was kind of the reverse because nobody wanted for me to be on somebody else's team. So but I did end up on a team, and I was worried because I thought I was going to have to do all the work. But it turns out that I didn't. All I had to do was hold the energy for them. They did all the work. And all I had to do was make, just I was just observing them and making sure that they were everything was on the right track. And we ended up, well, we were the top team. So yeah. So here I thought that I was and it yeah. NLP is a wonderful, wonderful tool. And it helped me to heal all the way down to the core. And but then Joe takes it to a whole different level. So that's how I got here. I needed that extra healing that I got from Joe, from going to that, not from him, but those forces that worked through him, and I got it at the retreat. And so now I'm healing my arm because my
I know,
guide said,
I know that people come with different characters. They just come that way, and so they need to reach in and heal and become who they really are, an energy being, and escape the programs that we have. There's many teachers because there's many different approaches needed.
yes.
So some of the people listening, there might be a couple who go, "This pranic healing just rings my bell. How would I find more information on it?"
Well, like I said, the classes are only taught on the West Coast and on the East Coast.
There's nothing online for them.
No, you really can't learn it online because you have, I already told you there's all these, procedures that you have to do that they
Right.
teach you. Very involved. So I think I had 3 trips over there and I took 5 classes all together. Yeah. So I'm a master pranic healer. And I'm not doing it right now. And I guess I should talk about that. I'm not doing it right. I'm not doing the healing. I have had a practice before where I did have clients and like I said, I do see clients and I do healings maybe 4 to 6 times a year, maybe. But I'm not doing it because I haven't been called to do it. And I feel, my experience has been that unless I'm called, then it doesn't work out as well. It's like anything else. When you're called, everything falls into place and it makes it so much easier. So right now, I've got a great situation, even though thinking about changing that as well. I want to go back to sales. That's what I do is I sell. And I've used NLP in my sales. That's, I, I believe, that's why I've been so successful in sales because NLP teaches you how to create a rapport. It teaches you how to calibrate. So I'm always looking at my client to see, it teaches you how to really connect with somebody so that you find out what does that person really need. It's just like, like this thing with this clients that I had that they thought it was one issue and we addressed that issue, but it was really their marriage. And they didn't really, I think had a clue, but they weren't quite sure. And so I'm the one that kind of like shed light on that and said, hey, this is really what's creating this and you really have to address it, because you want to keep that together because they had a beautiful family. Yeah.
Well,
So,
I
yeah,
know that some of the people here have experience with Reiki, and how would you contrast the NLP with Reiki, for instance?
this is because I've never studied Reiki, but I've been told that a lot of people that have studied Reiki want to learn pranic healing because the reason is because with I understand that Reiki is a hands-on, where you actually it's a touch technique and that they can take on negative energies if they're not careful. With pranic healing, that doesn't happen because you never touch the person. You bring the energy in through you and then you send it out. And so when I do a pranic healing, I'm energized. Oh my God, it feels amazing because I end up being I'm, like energized, completely like radiating.
Hmm.
It's it's really amazing. But
Well, that's
yeah,
very much like the Reiki that I was told. You put your hands over it, you tune in. Each center has its on, and the way I was taught Reiki is that you kind of sweep it and draw it up. It's not your energy that comes in. It's not your energy that goes away. You're the energy field that sweeps it clean. and each center, as I experienced it, was a color field. It was really kind of cool because I do this and that's one color. I do this, that's another color. It was just like it was really cool, and I would kind of scoop energy and feel it down, and like you said with that, I got as much energy out of it as the person I was with. I was just absolutely,
You
just
know, I think the reason maybe that your clients that got headaches, the way you described to me, is because my this is what I think my instructors would say. Okay, my pranic healing instructors, because like I told you, we do a lot of cleaning. Okay, we clean the centers. Okay, we clean. If I'm doing my hand, if I'm using my hand to clean and to energize, I clean my hand after, if sometimes I'll do it twice and then I'll clean, or I'll do it once if I just know, and then I'll clean with this water solution that they have us make. Okay. And so yeah, it's in you, and then there's a way to dispose of, like I said, of the negative energy. And when I was doing a pranic healing one time, there was actually black spots on the wall, which really freaked me out. But yeah. Yeah, so I mean, you have to be, it's energy. You got to be careful. Let's see. I think Jenny was asking if there's a book on pranic healing. I studied with Master Choa Kaksui, and he's passed, but I think he has somebody that teaches teaching on the East and West Coast. But I would get, if you want a book, he has a book on pranic healing that I would recommend. But
right.
again,
Can you
it's
write his name down on that so it will be spelled correctly?
yes,
I was looking at pranic healings today and yesterday on YouTube, and there's numerous YouTube's uh, videos about pranic healing where he is mentioned as the source, and then there'll
yeah.
be somebody teaching it. But
Master Choa. Yeah, I studied with him, one of the classes that I took. But and now he's passed, but there's somebody else, I think, one of his disciples that's doing it. But I think this is the right spelling. Um, Choa. But again, it's experiential. It's like anything. Let me say this about Joe. Okay, it wasn't until I went to the retreat that even though, and before I even say that, I want to give you credit, Greg, because you're the one that, by taking the classes, I didn't understand this is how we connected. I did not understand breaking the habit. I didn't understand the book. I didn't understand the meditations, space. I had been meditating for years,
space.
space, breathe, I'm like, what? What is that? But and so you helped me to understand, and to the point where I ended up going to the retreat. But until I got to that retreat, that's when I really could that I when I really got it,
Yes.
especially the fact that I was a Healy and I experienced that. But again, these all of this to me are experiential.
Yes.
Yes. And so again, for pranic healing, to me, in order to do it, to know how to do it right, you have to go to the classes. Now, I've been asked to teach pranic healing and also NLP, but I haven't done that because I have not been called to do that. And to me, it's a personal thing that I feel like, you know, if God wants me to do that, He will open all the doors and everything will be, you know, laid out. I will I'll do it. But that hasn't happened.
Okay.
That hasn't happened. So, I don't know, what the future, I know my future vision of my life, you know, but I'm not sure if that's going to be part of it. So.
Okay.
But I still use it. I use it for me. And whenever I'm called to use it for a client, because I do get calls to do it. If my guides tell me, yes, we want you to do that work, then I'll go do it. But
Okay. Does it? It's getting time for a lot of questions. I think.
does anybody
Everybody's
have
been
any
real
questions?
quiet and kind of studious. Now let's
Yeah.
talk to us. Talk to us, please. Talk to us how they mix, how they match, and how they don't. I'm good or how tos.
Any questions?
I found that when I was reading about this, the principles of Dr. Joe are right in line. Um, the energy centers, the raising up, the pulling the energy, the holding. Uh, there's one pranic breathing where you hold it up and you hold it for 3 seconds, then you let it go. I mean, just that's right out of the breathing exercises that
I
Dr. Joe
want
does.
I want to make some distinction. Well, you see, you were talking about pranic breathing, pranic. I don't do that. I don't do pranic breathing. I don't do pranic meditations. To me, I don't know what that is. Somebody came up with that. I do the pranic healing. Okay, that's taught
I thought they would
by
all be
master.
together. It's good that we talk about this because if
No,
I don't
no,
know, I can tell you they don't
but
know. So
I
tell
will
us about
say,
it.
I will say this, that the work I've done, that I've used NLP and pranic healing to heal myself. Because the way from where I came, I could be on the streets. And my friends know this. I could be on the streets. There would, and I'm not because of what I've done, the work I've done to heal myself to get to this point. But see, the difference is that I did that in the 3D. Okay, because now I get it, from studying Dr. Joe. I did that in the 3D, and I was successful in doing that, but it takes longer and it's harder. Dr. Joe takes it to a whole new level where
Yes.
you're creating in the 5D. And to me, that's very exciting, to be able to manifest in the 5D. Okay. Not to say that, I still do visual squash. I still use my NLP. I still do the pranic healing when I'm called to do that. But and I use a lot of other modalities too. But that's the difference, okay, is that it's 3D versus 5D. And like I was telling somebody today in one of the meditations, one of the meditation groups, for Dr. Joe, that now I'm at a place where I don't want to live in the 3D anymore. I got such a release when I was healed at the retreat. And I don't want, if you can exist in the 5D, of course the ideal is to be able to maintain that connection and to be in the 5D all the time. And that's what I want. And so when these, like when the thoughts come and they do, they kind of sneak in, but now my head is so much more clear, so I'm aware, and I'm still working at that, and to become more aware, so then I say, I don't want that. I don't want to be in the 3D anymore. I want to live in the 5D,
Right.
because in the 5D, like Joe says, that's where all the potential exists, and that's where the problems don't exist, right?
Yes. Yeah. As it becomes more familiar, then your common life seems like an alien personality that walks into the room. Just like, who are you? Okay, I remember you. Go away. Yeah.
Yeah. So does anybody have any questions?
On the avenue of doing the NLP and the pranic healing, would you just go to Joe's work, or like I know you said you still use them because they're known to you, but like I'm engaged in the work with Joe and I think, oh, do I want to, explore a bunch of other things because it's quite intense actually exploring Dr. Joe's work. Like it's quite time consuming so would you still think they all play a role, or now that you know about Dr. Joe, would you just dive into that?
That's a good question, Lori, because you have to consider the time because, I started doing this 30 years ago. My son was 3 years old and I was a mess and I needed something. And so I was really blessed to find NLP, but Dr. Joe wasn't doing this. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for
So I
sure.
started out using what I had available to me. Yeah, and you're right, it was 3D. It was taking, which means when I say 3D, that means it takes longer. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's more
yeah.
involved. Dr. Joe, oh my God, it's just so much, even though you're doing these meditations, but and that gets easier. But yeah, you're able to do so much more in the 5D versus 3D. And it's easier for me to think in those terms and explain it that way. So does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess just the just the thought, like, would you even embark? Like, I know I've heard of NLP, you know, but I didn't know much about it. So would you actually say that it complements the work or just go with Dr. Joe's work? You know
I
what I mean?
think that's okay. That's really good because a good question again, because I think that a lot of this, what we're experiencing now, evolved from the work that they did.
Yeah.
So I think the answer is no, not necessarily no. Joe, I think, like I said, takes it to a whole new level.
It's kind of integrated into his work and it may be slightly different techniques and methods, but it's
He
in
even
there.
he even
Yeah.
says, use whatever tools you have at your disposal, like EFT, he mentioned EMDR,
Mhm.
didn't mention
Right.
NLP or pranic healing, but I'm sure he's aware of them. Somebody asked in the chat, they asked, how does NLP compare to tapping? I have used tapping. I use it a lot. I still use it. NLP is not like tapping. They're completely different. Yeah. I hope I explained it enough for you to understand that. I would, tapping is a very good resource. It's a lot easier. NLP is a lot more involved, and pranic healing is a lot more involved. I don't know. I ask sometimes why I was, gifted. Well, I used it on myself. I mean, that alone is an answer. But I've asked, why was I taught this? Why did I learn this? But and maybe I will, open healing centers and use it in that way. It's still valuable. It still helps, in a lot of situations.
Let
But
me
yeah,
ask let me ask
Dr.
you a
Joe
question
is
along this line.
amazing.
One of the main things, biggest, most unique thing about Dr. Joe's work for me is that even though I learned a number of modalities, for me, I got a hold of Dr. Joe's work, and it was for the first time in my life I was learning how to heal my heart, and that was a game changer, because I don't want to name them, but I had a list of the modalities I'd learned, and I got competent in them.
Yes.
Never would you call me a master in them, but I got competent with them. But none of them touched me here. I got into Dr. Joe's work, and before I was halfway done with breaking the habit, I was busting my heart out, just going, "Oh my God!" So, but in the little bit that I've learned in talking to you about NLP, I see some tools that can be used uh, in the work. Um, and with that in mind, where would somebody go to learn some, let's at least say entry level NLP work?
Well, there's a lot of stuff online right now. There's a lot of people that I know that have, I can't really, you know, name people right now, but yeah, there's different uh websites where you can go and get some training in NLP. There's a lot of books too.
I think we are at the end of our time, and that was a pretty heartfelt discussion. Open our world, to a couple new subjects, which is the theme of my January work. What next? What else is out there? And so I thank you for your time, Anna. We're going to end this